Let's have a look at protein. For those of you with the book, we're looking at Module 1.3. We'll go into more detail on proteins when we get to Module 3 itself. Proteins are made up of amino acids, and there are 20 known amino acids that make these biological proteins. We categorize amino acids as essential or non-essential. And if you recall, essential means we have to get them in the diet or we can develop deficiencies. We categorize proteins as, on the left, complete, high biological value, high quality proteins. Did I say left? And on the right, incomplete, low biological value, low quality. Heads up, on the left we have animal products only. On the right, we have non-animal products. There is one non-animal product that we can include as being complete, and that's soy, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes. I'm still waiting for the memo on quinoa. Haven't gotten it. So we classify proteins based on the proportion and amounts of those essential amino acids. The quality of the protein is based on the essential amino acids present in that food. This slide and the next one show us different vegetarian eating patterns. The only one who's at risk of developing significant number of deficiencies, and you can see, is the vegan. And none of these folks are at risk of a protein deficiency because, as we'll talk about shortly, your vegan can consume incomplete proteins together to get all of those essential amino acids. So stay tuned. So this slide has the vegan, the ovo-vegetarian, lacto-vegetarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, pesca-vegetarian, pollo-vegetarian, and semi-vegetarian, which I've also heard referred to as flexitarian. You can tell me about who you know who is a vegetarian and what kind of vegetarian they are. And if you ask me, I'll tell you about the fruitarian that I knew when I lived in Pennsylvania. So protein, if we look at the quality of protein, our high quality proteins contain all the essential amino acids and are of high biological value and are considered complete. Complete proteins come from animal sources such as milk, yogurt, and, as I said, soy. Soy is, for our purposes, the only non-animal source of protein that contains all the essential amino acids. Our low-quality proteins lack one or more of the essential amino acids, are considered low biological value proteins or incomplete proteins, and they tend to come from non-animal sources. Does that mean that if you don't consume animal products, you won't get adequate protein? Not at all. Hold on. Because if you are a vegan, you can combine two incomplete proteins together that will give you all the essential amino acids that are required by the body. This is a process referred to as complementary proteins. So this process is when you have low quality proteins combined in such a way that all the essential amino acids that are limiting in one are provided by the other. And this combined protein gives you all the essential amino acids found in a high quality protein. This table shows you one way to combine peanut butter and bread. Yes, peanut butter sandwiches are a complete protein. I'm not asking you to remember those individual amino acids, but peanut butter by itself, a legume, contains the essential amino acids lysine and isoleucine, but is lacking methionine and tryptophan. Bread, a grain product, is lacking isoleucine and lysine, but contains methionine and tryptophan. When you combine those two together, you get all the essential amino acids in the complete proportion to provide us with a high quality protein. Do you need to have them at the same meal? I used to say yes, but I will describe to you for you in a minute a study that's going on right now. They're still recruiting, I think, it's testing this hypothesis. Let's have a look at Dr. Patton Jones' study. He's looking at complete and complementary proteins and incomplete proteins and their effect on muscle synthesis. He's looking at whether or not the complementary proteins should be consumed at the same meal or whether having them at different times of day will still result in the same amount of skeletal muscle synthesis. So let's see, what's the description? To highlight the importance of protein quality rather than total protein content of a meal, the investigators will demonstrate that unlike high-quality protein, a single meal containing 30 grams of an incomplete protein source does not stimulate skeletal muscle protein synthesis. So he's saying that, well, let's have a look at what his different groups are. This is an interventional study. It started in March of 2019, and it won't be completed until January 2021. Maybe next year I'll have the results. So the meals, there are 4 groups. One group will be getting 30 grams of high-quality protein, of beef protein at each meal, and they're looking at how that stimulates muscle synthesis, muscle protein synthesis over a 24-hour period. Another group will be getting 30 grams of complementary protein at each meal. So they'll be getting the beans and rice or peanut butter and bread, and they're going to look at how that's affecting muscle protein synthesis. They think that it will have a positive effect, but not as much as beef. A third group will contain 30 grams of incomplete protein at each meal. So, for example, they're only going to get beans at one meal. All right, so let's say they're only going to get legumes at each meal and no complementary source, even if it's at another meal. They don't think that that will stimulate skeletal muscle protein. And the fourth group, 30 grams of plant-based proteins that are incomplete at separate meals, but complementary over a 24-hour period. So beans at one meal, rice at the other. So the hypothesis being that they think that this will fail to stimulate skeletal muscle protein. And I'm curious because knowing the digestive process, I've thought that if we have the complementary proteins over several hour period, that they would still provide the benefit of a complete protein. I did say, however, that it's easy to eat beans and rice or to eat peanut butter and bread, but they're looking specifically at having one incomplete protein at a meal and the other complementary protein at a different meal and its effect. So maybe next year at this time I'll have the results. Functions of protein include growth, repair, and maintenance of tissue. Proteins are also used as enzymes or catalysts to stimulate reactions. There are certain hormones that are made from amino acids, hormones like insulin and glucagon. We'll talk more about them when we talk about diabetes. Proteins are involved in regulating fluid balance and keeping fluid in their separate compartments, inside the cell and outside the cell. Proteins are involved in transportation. We'll talk about something called a chylomicron or a lipoprotein, which is a protein that transports lipids or fats throughout the body. Or, for example, hemoglobin is a protein that transports iron, which carries oxygen throughout the body. Proteins are involved in immune function. The antibodies you may be hearing about, antibodies are made up of amino acids, and they are involved in immune function. And look, down here at the bottom, proteins last when there is nothing else to provide energy, will be broken down and used for energy. And keep in mind, we'll talk more about this in Module 3, when the body is using protein for energy, it is sacrificing all those other functions. The dietary recommendations for protein are based on body weight. What I crossed out here is that the dietary recommendations were based on high-quality dietary grams per kilogram body weight. And I think it's like 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight. I have an X over it, so I don't remember what it says. But I don't agree with that. I think that that dietary recommendation for protein helps prevent deficiency, but I'm in a process of flux. I do agree, though, that 10 to 35% of your calories should come from protein. And when you do your diet projects, you'll see how much protein you're getting in your diet. So to summarize, proteins are made up of 20 amino acids that we can categorize as essential or non-essential. We also categorize proteins as complete and incomplete based on their amino acids. Complete proteins are animal proteins and soy. Incomplete proteins are plant proteins. by combining plant proteins together so that you can get all the essential amino acids in a process called protein complementation, you can have a high biological value protein source. Well, actually, we'll see what the results of that study are, won't we? Primary function of protein is tissue repair and maintenance, and when absolutely necessary, proteins will be broken down and used for energy to the tune of 4 calories per gram, just like carbohydrates. And it's recommended to get between 10 to 35% of your calories from protein. All right, see you in class.